Welcome to CounselCast from the Council of Insurance Agents and Brokers. I'm Sandy Laycox, Associate Managing Editor of Leaders Edge magazine, and I'm joined today by Scott Fouts, Vice President of the South Region for Hub International's Risk Services Division. How are you, Scott?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here with us. Your presence here is very timely as we are nearing Distracted Driving Month, which is April, and we're going to talk a lot about distracted driving along with what's going on in the commercial auto realm, technology changes, and those kinds of things. But figured we could start off talking about some distracted driving. And, I know you've got some stats around it that are pretty important, and we'd love to hear what you guys are doing to recognize the upcoming Distracted Driving Month in April.
Absolutely, yeah. So our Hub Services team is actually aligning with kind of National Safety Council's Distracted Driving Month. And basically, April 2nd, we'll be rolling out a Distracted Driving webinar, and it's more for managers, supervisors, operation managers of the do's and the don'ts, but also talking about policies and procedures and some of the costs associated with distracted driving, because there are some lawsuits out there to where, from an employer liability standpoint, the liability has increased, and they paid out these large sums of money in these lawsuits that are dedicated to distracted driving. The following week, April 9th, we'll actually be kicking out an on-demand kind of webinar / podcast for drivers. We'll actually send that out to our clients and prospects, and they're more than welcome to actually feed that off into their drivers. And our goal there is to give some type of driver awareness training to the ground level folks, from drivers, maybe ops people, and things like that. And then later in the month, the 16th, we will actually be doing a couple bulletins and safety blogs around distracted driving. And then the last week of the month, we'll actually be having one of our hub vendors, Fleet Mode, which is actually an app that your commercial drivers or any type of drivers can have on their phone, and it basically locks out any type of incoming calls, text messaging, anything that would be considered distracted driving, but also has kind of a GPS component to it, so where you can get some driver data when the driver's driving, with speed and telematics and things like that. So it's not really a telematics solution more than it is driver monitoring and cutting out driver distractions. So that will be our month-long campaign. Our goal, obviously, is to bring more awareness to distracted driving and some of the issues that are out there. A lot of folks, that's one of the things that's really pushing the commercial auto industry right now. 25 to 30% of all accidents are attributed to distracted driving, and the costs associated with that are just astronomical when you think about the cost from a liability standpoint, medical insurance, but also the physical damage of the vehicle. So that's really pushing the commercial auto industry right now.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about where the industry is going. We've seen increasing hardening of the market over the past few years, due in part to distracted driving. Are there other factors involved? Can you shed a little light on that for us?
Sure, absolutely. So I would say probably over the last 10 years, you've seen an increase, obviously, in the cost of insurance coverage from an automobile standpoint. If you could go back to 2006 to now, it's up almost 20 points from a combined loss ratio. And for those that don't know insurance, there's really two components in the commercial auto industry. There's underwriter expense, and there's overall loss ratio. And the underwriter expense always sits about between 28, maybe 30, maybe 32% each year. And then you have a loss ratio that is based on client performance, and that's really pushed into the 76, 78 range. So when you're combining those two numbers, anytime you get over 100, that is not very good. To put in perspective, in 2006, I think we started somewhere around 92. And this past year, we're just over 112. So you're talking a pretty good jump over the course of 10 years, a decade, of 20 points. And that's really pushing the cost. And there's really not too many carriers out there right now that are doing it very well. And a lot of them, in my opinion, you're going to see it go a lot away from first dollar and guaranteed cost to more of maybe an SIR or maybe even a deductible. I think when we look at auto insurance coverage in the next couple of years, I think guaranteed cost is just going to be a luxury that a lot of companies just aren't going to be able to afford.
Are there any carriers who are doing this well at all? And if so, Can you talk to us about what they are doing differently?
So I think carriers are being very selective about what types of industries they're willing to get into. If you look at the top 15 carriers right now, from all in, from a direct right, Progressive is probably one of the few that's profitable. Back in 2016, I think in September 2016, they decided to get out of the towing truck operation. So I think if you look at the different carriers, they're being very selective about the types of industries that they're willing to write, but also looking at the controls. They're going to want to write the best in class when it comes to those type of industries. And when you think about best in class, like the selection of drivers, the monitoring of drivers, whether it's telematics, looking at their policy and procedures, their driver accountability. So I think when you're looking at carriers long term, they're going to want to know those controls are in place, but also they're monitoring their drivers. But you really look at the top 15 carriers right now from a direct written premium standpoint for auto, I would say Progressive is one of the few that are profitable.
So for brokers who are trying to work with clients to get their employees, their drivers, better policies, do you have any advice for how they can help with education, with training, with using some of these tools, telematics, what have you, that can help with, lower the risk?
Absolutely. So I think one key thing that all carriers are going to look for right now is having a formal fleet safety program, having a way to not only hire drivers, but to evaluate them, whether it's having a motor vehicle evaluation tool, going back 2 or 3 years, really looking at their motor vehicle records, but also what do you do with them once they get in the door? Whether it's driver training, whether it's monitoring by telematics, retraining post-accident, even refresher training. Even if a driver doesn't have accidents, they can always have bad habits. So what does that annual refresher driver training look like? Are you having an annual review with the driver to kind of spot check those things, giving them kind of a driver scorecard? I think carriers are really going to align with that monitoring and driver accountability going forward, because that's really the only way that they can make sure that they're putting drivers in the best position. And ultimately, the supervisors and managers that are actually overseeing those drivers, and that's why our webinar for the distracted driving we're kicking off with the supervisors and managers, they're the front line of defense for any company. They're really the boots on the ground that not only that are looking at the accident, investigating the accident, but they're also coaching the drivers. And right now in the industry, specific to trucking, it's really hard to find and retain really, really good drivers. And even with the new ELD mandate that came out this past December, you're probably seeing a decrease of probably 2 or 3% of drivers across the board. So where are the industries going to get those drivers from? Where are they going to coach them? Where are they going to train them? And you're going to go back to the trucking schools and things like that. But ultimately, once they're on the door, you want to make sure that you're training them, and keeping them happy in the sense, with good benefits and things like that. So it's really a wholesale gamut of really coaching and getting good employees and drivers in the door.
Another number that we've talked about in the past and that stands out is the increasing claim severity in auto. Can you talk a little bit about what drives that?
So a couple of different things. When you think about any of the medical insurance coverages right now, medical costs, the cost of going to a doctor visit or something happened, those insurance costs have gone up. I think that the number over the last decade was around 47% overall cost increase, and that really comes back to the cost of health care, the cost of going to see a doctor or something that happens, long-term rehabilitation. I think one thing that a lot of folks get lost on is, when you have a workers' comp claim, it's one claim. You have a workers' comp claim, the employee gets back to work, whether it's transitional duty or maybe there's some indemnity and medical costs. But when you have a vehicle accident and you hit somebody that has 2 or 3 passengers in the car or in the vehicle, you're going to have 1 or 2 physical damage claims from each vehicle, but then you're going to have 2 or 3 liability claims from the folks that were in there. So one event can result in probably 5 or 6 claims depending on the number of passengers that are in it. So from a medical cost standpoint, that factor goes up just because of the exposure. I think the other side of it, the physical damage over the last probably 10 years is probably rose about 17%, if I remember my numbers correctly. When you think about that, it's great that all the vehicles that you see now with the lane departure and assistance with mirrors and all the bells and whistles that come manufactured into a vehicle, it's great to have, and it's built in a lot of safety devices. But once that vehicle gets into an accident, once the vehicle is damaged, the sensors are damaged, the lane departure doesn't work anymore, or even something from an electronic mode where it shuts the car down if you've been into an accident, the cost of that has gone up because those type of safety devices, those type of sensors, the cost of repair those and just the labor for the folks that are being trained to repair those items has gone up. So I think you're going to consistently see the cost of both medical and physical damage insurance going up in the future, and that's really pushing the severity.
Yeah, and we haven't been able to solve the healthcare cost problem yet either, so it's kind of a double whammy there. So looking into the future and talking a little bit about all of these, technologies, bells and whistles, how, obviously, we can take this pretty far and love to touch on driverless cars as well. Just take us into the future a little bit and talk about how these changes will affect the commercial auto insurance industry in terms of, changes in liability or changes in, obviously, what the car can do and what the person is responsible for and et cetera.
Yeah, so somebody asked me the other day, we were talking about autonomous vehicles, and I don't think it's right around the corner like a lot of folks think. I think it'll be a little bit longer term. But when you think about autonomous vehicles, take trucking, for example, you're still going to have drivers in the cab delivering the product, getting the product on and off the trailer. So I don't think that'll go away. I read an article the other day that I think it was Spark Industries that had delivered water for a 68-mile stretch somewhere in Florida after Hurricane Irma. And it was really the first autonomous vehicle that went. There was somebody in the cab, so it wasn't obviously driverless, but there was somebody there, but it did operate on its own. I still think that technology is way down the road. I think that it also presents other exposures. I laugh. A couple of days ago, a friend of mine was telling me that something with one of his electronics inside his own vehicle was going wrong and kept dinging and belling, and all of a sudden some of the electronic parts shut down. And the vehicle's only 2 years old, so imagine a driverless car out there with the dings and the bells and the whistles start going off and there's nobody there to take control of the vehicle. So I think it comes with its own exposures and controls. There's also a lot of monitoring in the vehicles that are going to be there, and then you also have that cyber exposure. So I think long term there'll be a lot of folks that probably adapt to where the industry will be. I really don't know. If in my opinion, my professional opinion, we're probably a good 10 years away from really having autonomous vehicles. There's some manufacturers out there right now having a hard time even getting products out on the line, just in general sense of cars. So I think when you're talking about trucking or maybe the commercial motor vehicle industry, I think we're a little bit away from solely autonomous vehicles. And even if we do get to that point, you're really going to need drivers and folks that are in the cab delivering those products, picking up those products and things like that.
My colleague and I were sitting here discussing the fact that California had recently passed a law allowing autonomous vehicles to be tested on the road without anyone in the cab, which we thought was an interesting development in not necessarily that any of these cars are ready, but that little bit of regulation is moving forward was interesting.
Yeah, so a little bit of that's posturing around the industry. Just like any other state, you're going to want manufacturers, you're going to want companies to come to your state and build factories and build jobs long term. So a little bit of that's posturing around, hey, we made the regulations open to attract more companies to come there and want to build or want to come there and test. So that allows them to do that. I don't know a lot of companies. I read an article the other day that there was I can't remember the name of the manufacturer of the company, but Domino's, the pizza company, was looking at trying to do kind of the first delivery, autonomous vehicle, and they were partnering with one of the car manufacturers. So I think those type of, and I'm not calling them gimmicks, but I think I'll call it more posturing around what's out there, to getting names out there, state recognition out there. I think it's going to want to drive, companies to come to those states. Not just from the manufacturing standpoint, but if the laws are open that way and they're allowed to do it, it's kind of being like first in doing it. So I think that's a little bit more posturing around probably the industry and attracting businesses and talent and money more than anything else.
Yep, that was a really good point. There was one other thing I wanted to ask you about, and this goes back to a talk that you gave a few months ago to one of the council groups, and you were talking about these smarter cities and how that really plays into this in an interesting way. And I was wondering if you could describe a little bit of that for us.
Sure. The DOT right now actually has a grant program, and I want to say it's 42 or 45 million, but they opened it in 3 spots. They opened it in Tampa, Florida, New York City, and I believe it's I-80 off in Wyoming. And it's really dedicated towards smart cities. And it's a grant program. You can go through and apply for free federal grant money, but it's really for this equipment that actually fits into your vehicle. And it's really going towards these smart cities that, whether it's lights or the information bounces off different signs, it's really a way that all this equipment talks to each other, and it really is kind of geared around, companies being able to figure out where maybe there's crossroads or a better route to get there, whether it's, construction on the interstate that may be shut down, and it's really more about efficiency. But the smart technology actually talks to each other, and if you're in one of these cities, you can actually apply for the free grant money that'll give you the equipment. They won't install it in all the vehicles you probably have in the fleet, but a small portion of them, and they allow it as a pilot, as a test opportunity. But the way the technology works is it bounces off different camera systems, monitoring devices all around the city. So in Tampa, New York City, and off I-80 in Wyoming, these devices are set up, whether it's on the interstate or on the roadways, and they talk to each other. And, it was really kind of built around, again, efficiency and fuel costs and emissions and things like that. So instead of being, at a stoplight after stoplight after stoplight, the technology kind of talks to you and lets you know what's the best direction and course of driving in order, not just from a fuel efficiency and maintenance cost standpoint, but emissions and carbon dioxide and things like that. So I think on their level, they're really trying to gear different cities that maybe have opportunities to be what they call smart cities. And it's really, really, really neat project. You can actually go to the DOT's website and kind of look up the pilot program. And if you're in one of those cities, you can actually go and apply for the free grant money.
Any other final thoughts you want to give us on the industry, where it's headed, anything else?
Not really. I think we covered it. I think, distracted driving month, again, I think that's probably one of the most biggest things out there right now that's pushing the commercial auto industry. Probably more than speeding or drunk driving accidents or distracted driving. The problem that we're having, I think, right now in every state, I think 31 out of 50 states right now really don't have a way of tracking distracted driving. So, and what I mean by that is if you got into an accident and it was deemed distracted driving, that's really all it says. It may even say cell phone, but it really doesn't get down to kind of into the weeds. Was it text messaging? Was the person eating? Were they messing with the radio? It really doesn't really signal out what the distracted driving was. And I think we're going to have to really get to that point at some point from a tracking standpoint, or with the way the police report would roll out whenever somebody is distracted driving and they were messing with the radio, to that level of thinking, because we really need to identify what it is. And I think if you look at the statistics right now, cell phones are about 23 to about 25% of all accidents. So a quarter of all accidents are attributed to cell phones. But, is that text messaging? Is it, doing Google CarPlay or Apple CarPlay on your phone? Those things really need to be accounted for if you really want to get to the crux of distracted driving. But ultimately, it's going to fall back on the companies, and I really stress employer liability when I say this. If you're allowing your drivers to talk or text on their phones while they're in the vehicle, you could be liable. So you're going to see that kind of come out during our webinars from a hub standpoint over the next month.
Thank you for joining us for CounselCast from the Council of Insurance Agents and Brokers. Until next time, be sure to follow us on Twitter for all the latest updates. We're at the CIAB, and don't forget Leaders Edge Magazine at Leaders Edge Mag.